This video is going to be about confidence. What causes it? What causes you to have it? And what does everyone get wrong about confidence? We all like confident people. We're magnetically attracted towards them. Women are attracted to confident men. We flock to confident leaders. We're more likely to fall for a sales pitch if the man giving it to us strikes us as confident. But what does everyone... What the hell is going on over there? But what does everyone fail to understand about confidence? Well, it's this idea I want to discuss where you can generate confidence and your own life will improve. This idea that as long as you stand up straight with your shoulders relaxed, your eyes facing forward, that you can will yourself into success, that you can easily conquer your problems as long as you keep calm and level-headed, as long as you remain defiant in the face of danger and the possibility of loss. Or, as it's more commonly known, fake it till you make it. How many times have you heard that? How many self-help books have you read that float around this idea of fake it till you make it? Like, if you are a loser, if you're suffering in life, if people look down on you, your financial situation's not very good, all you have to do is believe in yourself. Just be confident. Well, I want to explain what everyone fails to understand about that and why this advice is misleading. Because confidence, true confidence, is derived from competence. You can't simply engineer your brain into making you have those feel-good hormones, like testosterone. You can't just command your brain to stop flooding you with cortisol and adrenaline, because the brain doesn't work that way. Your brain only permits you to feel secure and confident if it has reason to believe that you have skills which you can leverage to take control of your environment, and to a large extent that you can take control of whatever happens to you, of your own life, basically. You can only be, in summary, you can only be confident if you're good enough to be, if you have reason to believe that you're in control. And that is where I believe all anxiety comes from. Anxiety and neuroticism, it is in effect, it's a coping mechanism for not being able to control things, for not being able to control and regulate your emotions, for not being able to control what happens to you. I made this point in a video that I released a year or so ago, but I talked about how being poor makes you depressed. It's like, go figure. Because if you're living in a precarious situation where you have to budget between daily decisions like, do I want to spend money on food? Do I want to refuel my petrol tank? Or do I want to save and wait until the next paycheck comes round? Anyway, that is what people fail to understand about fake it till you make it. You can't just will yourself into being more confident unless you've learned to be, unless you've learned that you can stand against the odds, that you can stand against the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and by opposing, end them. This is why you see a lot of rich and successful people, they tend to be arrogant jerks. They tend to be dismissive and contemptuous of people who are beneath them, because they view themselves as special. And I think that's what confidence, that's a key component of confidence. It's believing that you're special, that nothing can really faze you or get you down. How do you, I ask this as a practical question, how do you make ordinary people feel like that? Well, you can't. And what I've just said to you, the idea that you can't just will yourself into being confident, not without some remarkable accomplishment in your life that assures you that you do have the requisite skill set to turn things around, that you can you can brave the storm, that you can manipulate your environment and your constitution to survive against adversities. Where does this idea that's wrong? Where does this idea that you can just will yourself into being confident, where does it come from? Whence does it originate? I think a lot of it is to do with modern culture. A lot of it is pop culture. I think a lot of it has its roots in honestly, I'm going to say movies, the media. All these films that promote inspiring messages. Just be yourself. No, believe in yourself. Be confident. There's one film I remember watching decades ago called Gattaca. It's set in a dystopian sci-fi. Do I want to call it dystopian? Well, it's set in a theoretical future where genetic engineering is the norm and everyone undergoes eugenic screening practices before being born. And it's the story about this one man who cleans rocket silos, a janitor, I think. I think he might be played by Leonardo DiCaprio, although I'm not sure. I think Jude Law's in it. And he is conceived of natural means. His parents are both ordinary humans. He wasn't genetically modified as an embryo, so he's not 6 or 7 feet tall. He doesn't have an IQ and 2 or 3 standard deviations above the mean. He's not an elite tier human, but he has a dream, and he wants to be the first normally conceived human to go into space. Actually, it's been decades since I last watched that movie. But so many things happen. There's a scene where he has this childhood game with his brother, where he and his brother, they both swim out in the middle of the stormy ocean to try and reach these rocks. And the last one to make it back loses, or the one who makes it out the first one to turn back tail and head back to the shore is a loser. And he says to his brother, do you know why I always swim out further than you? It's because I never have any intention of swimming back. I only have enough energy to swim forward. Something to that effect. Anyway, I'm just giving you one example of so many films that I've talked about, which gloss over this distressing and uncomfortable reality that we are all just different. And by virtue of the fact that we're all different, we're not all equally capable. We are not all equally competent, and therefore it stands to reason that we do not earn the right to be equally confident. Because nature is cruel. Nature doesn't like us to be on a level playing field. Nature likes to separate us into wheat and chaff, winners and losers. That's the fact that we're no longer living as Neolithic hunter-gatherers, the fact that we're no longer living in times where being strong and fast or being slow and weak is the difference between getting killed or passing on your genes. The fact that we no longer live in those days hasn't changed this. It's just that various dimensions of competence have emerged. So you no longer need to be physically strong and fast in order to be competent. There are lots of, if anything, it's become more specialized. Now you need to be more intelligent. You need to have significant brain power that allows you to acquire skills which would serve you in the modern economy, to provide services and operate complex machinery and systems which never even existed a few decades ago. But nature still doesn't care what we think or what we want. So that's why you can't just be confident if you close your eyes and believe in yourself. That's not how nature works, and that's not how it ever has. And this is what all those self-help gurus, those book writers, this is what they fail to take into account when they give you this naive, just fake it till you make it nonsense. And speaking of which, that reminds me, I wanted to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. You guys have probably heard of it, because it was a landmark study, or maybe I should call it an observation, that was recorded sometime in the mid to late 90s, where there appeared to be an inverse correlation between how confident one was in their own abilities with how competent they really were. As you've probably come across the Dunning-Kruger effect a lot if you spend a lot of time in the YouTube comments section, because people will take an example of some guy who's talking nonsense or sounding very authoritative on a subject he knows nothing about, and they're saying, look at him, he's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but listen to him waffle on. He's an example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. The more stupid you are, the less of a capacity you have to estimate your own stupidity. That's not actually what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, but that's what it's often, misrepresented as. And I got news for you. The Dunning-Kruger effect, it's moot. We don't actually know if the Dunning-Kruger effect is real. There have been various papers that have been published since then which have called into question the findings of the Dunning-Kruger effect. There was one that called the Dunning-Kruger effect a statistical artifact, meaning it just so happened that the findings of the study, of the original study, just so happened to capture an uneven distribution among participants with a variant distribution in terms of how smart or how capable they believed they were and their results. But the findings have failed to replicate since. And if you think that's shocking, I think I remember reading somewhere that virtually half of all psychology papers, the findings of virtually half of all psychology papers have failed to replicate. That means, I don't want to say that psychology is a junk science, but that's something that should alarm everyone who reads it. Anyway, if the findings of half of all psychology papers have been debunked, well, never mind what that says about psychology as a discipline, but what does that say about the Dunning-Kruger effect? What does it say about the notion that you can present yourself as confident and brave and really authoritative and commanding when in fact you know nothing? You're a dipshit, and you have IQ in double figures. Make an example. Well, I don't think people would be ready to hear that. I don't think people would like to hear that, because the Dunning-Kruger effect is yet another example of what I was talking about earlier. This idea that as long as you believe in yourself, you can breeze through life and win people over just as long as you generate confidence, even if it's based on nothing. Like those old movies from the 90s tell you. As long as you believe in yourself. Which leads me to another thing I want to discuss, another pop psychology phenomenon I've heard about: imposter syndrome. The idea that you can be surrounded by people who are highly knowledgeable about a particular field of research. I think this was originally, this phenomenon first came about when it was talking about black women in universities, or, you know, people from an ethnic minority background in higher education. And too many people in these studies, they felt like they didn't belong there. This is what they call imposter syndrome. They feel like they are an imposter. And the explanations I think they gave were something to the effect of, it's because of racism, it's because of prejudice, it's because of microaggressions. But the more likely, the more probable explanation is that they feel like an imposter in those academic, intellectual environments, because they know they don't. Because what I want, the core argument I want to make in this video is that overall, we do have a fairly reasonable grasp of our own intelligence and our own competence. Or even if we think we don't, our brain does. Our limbic system does. Because our brain was designed with hundreds of millions of years worth of evolutionary programming. It can detect threats. It can pick up on. It has an inbuilt radar for where it can pick up on things like us not feeling like we belong in a certain place, even if we're not able to rationally articulate it. And if it happens to be the case that so many of these people who claim to feel imposter syndrome feel uncomfortable, like they don't truly belong somewhere, well, should we not take a moment to consider the most likely and the simplest explanation is that they feel that way because they know they don't belong there? I'm sort of drawing on my own personal experience, because I felt like that a lot of the time when I was at university. Nobody really wanted to talk with me during any of my courses. And it wasn't for want of trying, it just felt like I couldn't focus on what they wanted to talk about. It felt like they would communicate telepathically among one another, but not to me. And there's a lot of things that I regret about going to university, but not completing my degree or flunking it just wasn't an option for me, because my family just would not hear it. My mother completed a university degree. My dad, well, he was hung up for many years about not completing his university degree, and if I had made the decision to abandon my university degree there and then, well, I would have been a huge disappointment, and I couldn't risk letting that happen. So I had to suffer, making myself feel like an outsider for many years. Even though all those years later, what has that university degree, what has it gotten for me? What achievements has it unlocked for me? Well, all those years later, I'm working a barely above minimum wage job as a care worker. I'm not married or anything. I don't have a particularly high paid job, and I still live with my mother and my grandparents. And I don't really have any interest in classics anymore. As a matter of fact, I lost interest in the degree very early on. I don't even know how I made it, even now. Anyway, if there's one thing that my own experience, yes, that's what I was going to say. My own lived experience is probably supplementary evidence for what I've been trying to say throughout this video. We do know, we have a reasonable grasp of how intelligent we are or we aren't. And to add to this, we also have a reasonable degree of knowledge as to how skilled or competent we are or aren't. And due to this, we can perceive situations, we can subliminally perceive situations where we feel uncomfortable or awkward due to feeling like outsiders. Because, here's the thing, again, I revert back to the topic of the video at hand, the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't real. It's an anomaly at best. Imposter syndrome is only real in the sense that you feel like an imposter because you are one, because real confidence is earned. It's not generated out of thin air. You can only be confident when you've earned the right to be. And that's what I wanted to argue in this video. Sorry if I dashed your hopes of changing your life to the ground. I'm sorry if this video didn't make you feel good. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now. Take care.